I'm Marlene Granger, 74 years old, and the house on Magnolia Lane was supposed to be the place where I'd grow old with my garden, my porch swing, and a lifetime of memories etched into every wall. The day my son helped me move in. He was 13, freckles on his nose, and a gap-toothed smile wide as the sky. He ran up the stairs, shouting, "Is this really ours?" Mom and I told him, yes, it was ours, bought with overtime shifts and a prayer. 38 years later, that same boy told me to pack my things and leave. He said, the house didn't suit someone my age before I go any further. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and tap that like button if you've ever had to start over later in life. I was born in Columbus, raised by a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who believed in saving every dime he earned. We didn't have much, but I grew up knowing how to make things last. My first job was at a retail store, folding sweaters for minimum wage. I stayed there for almost 4 decades, worked my way up to merchandising manager. By the end of it, my knees ached and my hands weren't as quick, but I still liked getting dressed for work every morning. My husband James left when our son Caleb was still in diapers, ran off with a woman from the office, and never looked back. I never remarried. I didn't see the point. Instead, I put all my focus on raising Caleb right, and slowly, bit by bit, I built a life that didn't depend on anyone else. I saved what I could read, every article I could find on budgeting and small investments. By the time I turned 60, I had no mortgage and a quiet little nest egg no one knew about. Not even Caleb, especially. Not Caleb. The house on Magnolia Lane had 4 bedrooms and a patch of yard. Just big enough to grow my prize-winning zinnias. I loved that space. Quiet mornings with my tea by the window. Sunday walks to church, and the rhythm of a life that didn't ask for much. Caleb grew up and got a job at an insurance firm downtown. Life stayed simple for a while until he met Erin. She was polished, always smiling, but never really looking you in the eye. I tried to be warm. She brought a pie once and told me I should repaint the shutters to something less dated. A few months later, Caleb and Erin came by with a plan. We've been thinking. Caleb started over lunch. Your house is so big, and we're just throwing money away on rent. Erin reached across the table and touched my hand. We could move in for a while, save up for our own place, and help you around the house. I hesitated, but Caleb was my only child, so I said yes. They moved in that fall. At first it was fine. Caleb fixed the porch light. Erin cooked a few dinners, but little changes started creeping in. My floral curtains were replaced with sleek white panels. The family photos on the hallway wall disappeared, swapped out for black and white art prints. And one morning, I looked out the kitchen window and saw my flower beds dug up, replaced by something Erin called low-maintenance gravel landscaping. I stood there holding my coffee, staring at the yard that no longer looked like mine. It looks more modern now, don't you think? She said when I asked. I didn't answer. The first-floor study became my bedroom. Soon after that, they said it was better for me not to have to climb stairs, but somehow they never asked if I still could. Every change was small, just small enough to swallow. But they were adding up. And one afternoon, as I was folding laundry, I heard them talking through the open window. Erin's voice, light and breezy. How much longer do you think she'll stay in good health? I didn't move, just listened. Caleb said something about being practical about how the house was fully paid off, about how maybe it was time to look into other options for me. I stood there, holding a towel, heart thudding in my chest, like I'd just heard something I wasn't supposed to. And that's when I knew the house I bought, the home I built, was no longer mine. It was a Thursday afternoon, early spring, with just enough warmth in the air to sit outside. I had brought a glass of iced tea into the garden and was pulling weeds from the border closest to the fence when I heard them talking through the open kitchen window. Caleb's voice was low, hard to make out, but Erin's carried clear. How much longer do you think she'll last? She said. There was a pause. Then Caleb answered, Don't say that. But his tone wasn't upset, just tired. I'm being realistic, she went on. She's not getting any younger. The house is in her name, but once she passes, it's yours. We could finally move somewhere closer to the office. Or we could suggest assisted living. It's not safe for her here, not at her age. I didn't move. My hands were still in the soil, a clump of roots half pulled. I just sat there staring at the edge of the flower bed. The same space where I used to plant tulips with Caleb when he was little. He'd carry the watering can, sloshing water over his shoes, and say he was helping. I stayed in the garden until the sun dropped behind the maple trees, and the tea had gone warm beside me. The following days were quiet, but something had changed. Caleb glanced at me differently, like he was watching for signs of decline. Erin started leaving brochures around the house, assisted living communities with names like Willow Creek or Sunset Grove. One afternoon, she left one on the coffee table open to a page that listed amenities and prices. At dinner that evening, she said, My Aunt Martha just moved into a place like this. She loves it, 24-hour care, weekly socials, yoga for seniors. I sipped my soup and asked, How old is she? 83, Erin answered, eyes flicking down to her plate. She has arthritis and mild dementia. I see, I said. Well, I'm 74. I have neither. Caleb cleared his throat and didn't say anything for the rest of the meal. A few days later, I came home from the grocery store to find Erin in my bedroom. Well, what used to be the study going through the top drawer of my dresser. She looked up when I stepped into the doorway and said, Oh, Marlene, I was just looking for those old photo albums. I wanted to show my mom pictures of Caleb as a kid. The photo albums were in the hall closet. She knew that. I didn't say anything, just waited until she left the room, then locked the door behind her. That evening, Caleb asked, Do you not trust us? I just like my privacy, I said. He looked disappointed. We're family. Mom, families don't keep secrets. I kept knitting and didn't answer. The real conversation came the following week. Caleb got home from work earlier than usual, his tie loosened and his face drawn tight. Erin was with him, sitting straight-backed on the living room couch, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Mom, Caleb said as he stood across from me, We need to talk. Of course, I said, setting my book aside. You can't live alone in a house that size, he began. It's not practical. You need care, supervision. Since when I asked? He hesitated. You've been forgetting things. You left the stove on last week. No, I didn't. You mix up days sometimes. I looked at him steadily. Are you saying I have dementia? No one's saying that, Erin cut in, but these are signs. We just want what's best for you. I've been living in this house for 38 years. If there were signs, I'd have seen them. Erin leaned forward. We're not trying to upset you. It's just, Caleb and I need our own space. A life of our own. You've lived here 5 years, I reminded them, and that arrangement was meant to be temporary. Real estate's expensive, Caleb said. We haven't been able to save enough for a down payment. I nodded slowly. So, what you're saying is you want the house? Without me in it. Neither of them answered. You've pushed me out of every room, I said. My bedroom, my garden, even the living room chairs are gone. Now you want me out completely. It's not like that, Caleb said. Then how is it? You're our only parent, he said. This house will be yours until it becomes mine, anyway. Why not just sign it over now and move somewhere more manageable, like where I asked? There's a senior living complex across town, Erin said quickly. It has a shuttle and a wellness center. Or a smaller apartment, maybe. I looked at her then, back at my son. I see. We can help with the transition, Caleb said. We'll take care of the moving costs. You can still come visit. I'm not selling this house, I said. Not to you. Not to anyone. You can live here for now. But the house stays mine. But that's not fair, Aaron said. We can't invest in a house we don't own. Then don't, I said. Live here as you are, or find your own place. Caleb stood, voice rising. You're being selfish. I looked at him, and for a moment I didn't recognize the man in front of me. I raised you, fed you, paid your tuition, and now you're telling me I'm a burden. You're twisting things. No, I said. I'm clarifying them. There was a long silence. Finally, I stood up and said, I'll move out. Give me 1 week. Caleb blinked. You're serious? Dead serious. Where will you go? That's not your concern anymore. He looked startled. Erin sat stiffly, her mouth tight. As for the house, I said you can stay, but it's still mine. I'm not changing the deed. I'm not signing anything. You'll have to pay the utilities going forward. The next morning, I started packing. Books first, then clothes, then the china I loved carefully wrapped in newspaper. I called my lawyer. I updated my will. I met with my financial advisor and asked about apartments in the city. I found one with a river view walking distance from the bookstore I liked with a concierge downstairs and good heating. On moving day, I rolled my suitcase to the door. Caleb stood at the bottom of the stairs, confusion all over his face. Aaron hovered behind him. Mom, are you really doing this? He asked. I looked around the foyer one last time. I am. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Aaron didn't say anything either. I'll leave the keys on the table, I said. And don't forget the water bill is due next week. They watched me walk down the driveway, load my bags into the back of a taxi, and pull away. I didn't look back. The apartment at Riverside Heights was quiet, clean, and smelled faintly of fresh paint and carpet glue. The building manager had left the keys in a small envelope on the granite counter. I set my bag down in the entryway and took a slow walk through each room. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the river. The kitchen was modern, too. Modern for my taste, but it was spotless. The bedroom had a walk-in closet and thick cream curtains. The bathroom had a built-in nightlight and a soft-closing toilet lid which made me laugh for no reason at all. I opened the pantry and made a list of staples to buy. I unpacked my dishes. I lined the bookshelf with the few novels I'd brought and placed a small framed photo of Caleb as a toddler on the side table next to the couch. He was about 4 in that picture, with peanut butter on his cheeks and his arm around a stuffed dinosaur. That night, I sat at the window with a cup of tea and watched the city lights ripple across the water. No one told me to turn down the volume on the television. No one shuffled past my door without knocking. The air felt still and wide. I took the next few days slowly. I bought groceries and hung up new towels. I found a little cafe 2 blocks away that served decent coffee and warm banana muffins. I called my old friend Judy and invited her over for lunch the following week. She had been one of the only people who remembered my birthday last year. When she walked through the door and saw the view, she let out a low whistle. Well, would you look at this, she said, setting down a bouquet of tulips. You finally moved out of that house. We had soup and sandwiches and sat at the window for nearly 2 hours talking about everything and nothing. I told her I hadn't told Caleb where I lived. Not yet. She nodded, but didn't say anything more. A few days later, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Thomas, the financial advisor I'd worked with for over 15 years. I'm thinking about buying a car, I told him. Something fun, something I've always wanted. There was a pause. Well, Marlene, what exactly do you have in mind? I was thinking a Porsche, I said. He chuckled, then realized I was serious. Well, he said if anyone's earned it, it's you. I know a dealership that'll take good care of you. The next afternoon, I dressed in my ivory blouse and my navy pants. I wore my good earrings and polished my shoes. When I stepped into the dealership, I felt the hush of glass and chrome and quiet money. A young man in a blazer approached with a smile. "Mrs. Granger, I'm Trevor. Mr. Carlson said you might be stopping by. Can I show you a few models?" I nodded, and he walked me over to a bright red 911 Carrera that glinted under the overhead lights like a piece of candy. I walked around it slowly, hand trailing along the curve of the fender. "This one," I said. "Can I sit in it?" He opened the door, and I lowered myself into the driver's seat. The leather was smooth and cool. The dashboard lit up like an aircraft. The steering wheel fit perfectly in my hands. "This is what I want," I said. Trevor smiled. "Excellent choice." We were halfway through the paperwork when the front door opened and I heard a familiar voice. "Caleb's. I'm telling you, it's a solid investment," he was saying. "It holds its value better than anything on the market." I didn't move. I finished signing the last page of the form and handed the pen back to Trevor. "I'd like to pay in full," I said. "No financing." He looked surprised, but nodded. "Absolutely. We'll have it delivered by tomorrow." I turned toward the entrance and caught Caleb's eye. His mouth fell open. Aaron stood beside him, frozen mid-step. "Mom," he said, "what are you doing here?" I stood up. "What does it look like you're buying that?" he asked, glancing at the red Porsche. "I just did," I said. Aaron looked at the car, then at me. "That's ridiculous," she said. "You don't need a Porsche." "No," I said. "I want one." Caleb stepped forward. "But—" How I picked up my purse and smiled. "I saved. I invested. You thought I was living off my pension. You never asked." Trevor excused himself quietly, leaving the three of us standing there beneath the showroom lights. "That's irresponsible," Aaron said. "At your age, I have my license. I passed a full physical. I'm not racing anybody, Aaron. I just wanted something for myself." Caleb ran a hand through his hair. "You could have told me." "I could have," I said, "but you never asked. You decided I was too old. You decided I was your problem. I'm not." There was nothing left to say. I turned to Trevor and asked for a delivery time. "We'll bring it to your address at 10 a.m. tomorrow," he said. "Congratulations again, Mrs. Granger." "Thank you," I said. It's the first time in a while I've felt like celebrating. As I walked past Caleb and Aaron, neither of them moved. Outside, the sky had turned a soft gold. I buttoned my coat, stepped out to the sidewalk, and flagged down a cab. Tomorrow, I'd have a new set of keys in my hand. And this time, the only person I needed to thank for them was me. The next morning, the doorman buzzed up just before 10. I opened the door, still in my slippers, and he said with a half smile, "You've got quite a delivery downstairs, ma'am." I took the elevator down and stepped into the sunlight just in time to see the red Porsche pull up to the curb. The delivery driver stepped out, clipboard in hand, and walked me around the car one more time before handing me the keys. It looked even better in daylight, sleek, clean lines, that deep glossy shine. I signed the last form and slid behind the wheel. A few people walking by turned to look. One woman about my age gave me a thumbs up and kept moving. The engine started with a low purr. The steering was smooth, tighter than anything I'd driven before. I eased onto the road, careful through the first few turns, then made my way across town. I wasn't heading anywhere in particular. I just wanted to feel the car on the road, the city outside my window. I turned up the radio. Jazz, soft and slow. For a little while, I forgot everything else. I drove past my old neighborhood. Not on purpose, but once I was nearby, I decided to see it again. Magnolia Lane looked the same. Same mailboxes, same cracked sidewalk squares, same little flag Caleb used to ride his bike past on his way to school. I slowed down in front of the house. The shutters were painted now gray instead of green. The flower beds were bare. The porch swing was gone. I didn't stop. I kept driving. That afternoon, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. "Hello, Marlene," a man's voice said. "It's Peter Carlin, from Carlin and Marsh, the law firm." I remembered Peter. He'd helped me years ago when James and I divorced. "I hope this isn't a bad time," he said. "I've been asked to get in touch with you regarding a real estate matter." "What sort of matter?" "Your former residence. On Magnolia Lane." I stepped into the kitchen and pulled out a chair. "What about it?" "There's been a filing, a quitclaim deed submitted by your son Caleb and his wife. It appears to transfer the house to their names." I didn't speak for a second. I never signed anything I said. That's why I'm calling. The signature on the document looks off. It raised some red flags with the recorder's office. They're requesting verification. "I never signed a quitclaim," I said again. "The house is still in my name. I have the deed." I checked it myself before I moved. Peter paused. "Then someone may have submitted a forged document. I can look into it for you, but we'll need to move quickly if we want to challenge it before it's processed." I wrote down his office address. "I'll bring everything I have tomorrow." After I hung up, I went to the drawer where I kept all my paperwork, property records, insurance, the will. Everything was there. I pulled out the manila folder with the original deed and read every line, then checked the envelope Caleb had once given me for what he said were just copies. I hadn't looked at it in months. Inside were printouts, photocopies of forms with my name typed on them, including one with a signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. I compared it side by side with the real one. The angle of the M was wrong. The tail of the G was too short. Someone had traced or imitated my handwriting, but it wasn't mine. I called Peter back. "I have something you'll want to see." The next morning, I drove to his office, handed over the documents, and watched his face as he looked through them. "This is forgery," he said flatly. "I'll draft a statement contesting the deed immediately. We'll file for an injunction. Will it be enough?" "It'll stop the transfer. Then we'll take the matter to the registrar. If necessary, to court." I left his office and sat in the car for a while before driving home. I didn't call Caleb. I didn't call Aaron. I wasn't ready to hear whatever explanation they might try to offer. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A text. From Caleb. "Mom, we need to talk. You misunderstood. It was just paperwork we filed for safekeeping. Aaron says it's standard." I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message came in. "Please call me. I don't want this to get messy." I turned off the phone and set it face down on the counter. That weekend, Judy came over again. I poured us both a glass of lemonade and told her what had happened. She listened quietly, shaking her head now and then. "Do you need anything?" she asked. "I need to think." She nodded. That night, I went through old photo albums. I found one from the year Caleb started high school. We'd taken a trip to Michigan, just the two of us. We'd driven for hours with the windows down, listening to music and eating gas station snacks. He was smiling and every picture arms slung around my shoulders like nothing in the world could come between us. I closed the album and set it aside. Something had changed over the years slowly, until I couldn't recognize the boy I had raised. But I wasn't going to lose my home and my name to a forged signature. I looked out the window at the quiet city below, lights glowing along the river. There was still more to come. But for the first time in a long while, I felt steady. It was just after 8 when I slipped the letter into the envelope. I'd printed it the night before, after going over every word 3 times. The envelope was thick, and I sealed it carefully before writing Caleb and Aaron's address across the front. I walked it down to the front desk and asked the doorman if he'd mind placing it in the outgoing mail tray. He looked at the envelope, then up at me. Of course, Mrs. Granger. Want me to make sure it goes out with the morning pickup? Yes, I said. Please do. I rode the elevator back up to my floor, unlocked the door, and let the quiet settle around me again. That afternoon, I took a walk down by the river. The breeze was warm for March, the kind that brushes your sleeves and makes you forget winter's edge. I stopped at a bench near the railing and watched the water move. The same thought kept circling in my mind. What would they say when they read it? Would they even believe it? By Tuesday morning, I had my answer. My phone rang at 9:12. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again at 9:15, then again at 9:19. By the fourth call, I picked up. Caleb's voice was tight. You sent us a letter. I did. You can't be serious, he said. A lawsuit. You're suing your own son. I walked into the kitchen and set the phone on speaker. I'm not suing you, Caleb. I'm filing a legal challenge to a forged document. You and Aaron filed a quitclaim deed without my knowledge. That's fraud. There was a pause, then Aaron's voice distant but clear. We were trying to consolidate assets for tax purposes. We didn't think it was a big deal. You forged my name, I said. That's not consolidation. That's a crime. Caleb's voice dropped. Why didn't you just call me? I wanted it in writing, I said. I wanted you to understand exactly what this means. There was another pause, then Aaron again. You've embarrassed us. Do you know how this makes us look? I'm not responsible for how it looks, I said. I'm responsible for protecting what I've built. Caleb sighed heavily. So what now? The registrar's office has the real deed and the statement from my attorney. The forged document will be voided. I've also added a restriction to the title, no changes without my notarized consent. You didn't have to go this far, he said. I didn't think you'd gone that far either, I said. Neither of us spoke after that. I ended the call and placed the phone back on the table. That evening, Judy came by with a lemon tart. She sat at the counter while I poured coffee. Did they call you? She asked. 3 times, I said. What did they say? I told her word for word. She took a bite of tart and shook her head. It's like they don't understand who they're dealing with. Later that week, Peter called to confirm the registrar's office had accepted the correction. The house on Magnolia Lane was legally secured in my name again. The forged document had been flagged and entered into the public record under investigation. Do you want to press charges? He asked. I want it documented, I said. I'm not looking to take it further. He paused. That may be wise, but you do have a case should anything happen again. Let's hope it doesn't, I said. On Friday, a floral arrangement showed up in the lobby. Cream roses, blue delphiniums, and a small card. Let's talk, please. Caleb. I left the flowers where they were. By Sunday morning, I received another envelope, this time hand-delivered. Inside was a typed letter, unsigned. Aaron's words, judging by the tone. We didn't think you'd react this way. You always said you wanted the house to stay in the family. That's what we were doing. You left so suddenly, we didn't know how to handle it. You need to consider how this affects all of us, not just you. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the drawer with the others. At some point during the week, I realized I hadn't cried. Not once. There had been anger, yes, shock. A strange, almost clinical kind of hurt. But no tears. The grief I'd felt back at the house, the slow erosion of trust, the exhaustion of being treated as less had worn me down over the years. What was left now was something simpler. A quiet kind of resolve. That weekend, I took the Porsche out again. I drove north past the edge of the city toward a small town I'd always meant to visit. I stopped at a roadside diner and ate lunch by the window. A waitress in her 60s refilled my coffee and asked about the car. "It's beautiful," she said. "Yours?" I smiled. "It is." She nodded. "Good for you." On the drive home, I thought about what Peter had said, that I had a case if anything happened again. And I knew I wouldn't let it happen again. Not like that. I parked in the garage, rode the elevator up, and stepped into the soft stillness of my apartment. It was mine, every inch of it. It was nearly 2 weeks before I heard from Caleb again. The calls had stopped. The texts, too. But on the second Monday in April, a certified letter showed up in my mailbox return address from a firm I didn't recognize. I opened it, slowly read the first line, then sat down. It was a formal request to mediate a dispute over estate allocation filed by Aaron's attorney. Tucked inside the envelope was a printed summary of joint family property and anticipated inheritance, complete with a timeline, bullet points, and estimates of real estate value. I flipped to the last page. Aaron had signed her name beneath a paragraph requesting an amicable transition of ownership of the Magnolia Lane property in light of its intended future role as a generational asset. I placed the packet on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a long time. They were trying again, just dressed it up in legal language this time. No forged signatures, no backdoor filings. Just a document that, if I didn't respond, could be used to initiate arbitration. They were counting on me to back down. I called Peter. He asked me to bring the letter in, then scanned the pages quietly before pushing his glasses up on his nose. "They're being careful," he said. "This isn't illegal, but it's pressuring, and it gives the appearance of mutual agreement. If you don't contest this, it could look like consent. What do we do?" "We respond in kind," he said. "Formally, unemotionally, and we add something of our own." He asked if I had any documentation about the improvements I'd made on the house since James passed. I did receipts from roofing work, landscaping, bathroom renovations, and a full HVAC replacement. "Perfect," Peter said. "We'll attach them. We'll file a record with the local clerk stating that any transfer attempt of the property must include full consent of the current sole owner, and we'll notify their attorney." 2 days later, we mailed our reply. It was quiet for a while after that. No calls, no texts. But I noticed small things start to shift. My bank called to confirm that someone had inquired about a line of credit under my name, but the application was flagged because the signature didn't match. They didn't say who submitted it, but I didn't need to ask. I changed my passwords, added 2-factor authentication on every account. I went through old shared services, utilities, tax prep software, even my grocery store account, and made sure I was the only authorized user. That Saturday, Judy and I went out for lunch. We sat on the patio of a small place near the museum and split a Cobb salad and iced tea. "They're testing your footing," she said. "They're going to find it hasn't shifted," I said. We talked for a while about her niece's wedding, and then about the weather, and then about nothing at all. It was a warm day, and the trees were just starting to bloom. That evening, I opened my laptop and pulled up my living trust. I'd created it the year James died, and I hadn't looked at it in a while. At the time, I'd included Caleb as the primary beneficiary of the house and any assets that remained after medical and funeral expenses. I reread it now, slowly. Then I opened a new document and began drafting an update. Not out of spite, but clarity. I appointed a neutral financial institution as executor, listed my health directives, and updated my beneficiary designations. I named the Museum Foundation as partial beneficiary, and the rest I split evenly between 2 organizations I'd supported for years. I didn't name Caleb or Aaron anywhere in the new version. When it was done, I printed the document, signed it in front of a notary the next morning, and dropped it off at Peter's office with instructions to hold the previous version as revoked. He took it from me without a word, gave it a glance, and nodded. That night, I slept easier than I had in months. By Thursday, I received another message from Aaron. This time, it wasn't a letter or a voicemail. It was an email with the subject line, "Let's talk about compromise." I didn't open it. I flagged it and moved it to a folder I labeled Archive. The weekend came and went. I bought a small potted basil plant for the kitchen, started waking earlier again, sat on the balcony in the mornings with coffee and a book. The days began to feel like mine again, not borrowed, not monitored, just lived. Peter called Monday morning. He said the clerk's office had updated the title restrictions, and a note had been placed on the county file indicating that any further inquiries about the property would require in-person confirmation from me. "You're protected," he said. "Thank you." He paused. "And Marlene, if they try anything else, we'll be ready." I walked to the window and looked down at the street below. The wind was picking up a little, catching the corners of awnings and the sleeves of the people crossing at the light. It wasn't over yet. I knew that, but it was no longer on their terms. It was the first Thursday in May when I saw them again. I had just come back from the market, 2 bags of groceries, a bunch of tulips peeking out the top, and was unlocking my front door when a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Aaron stepped out first, then Caleb trailing behind her, his shirt wrinkled and his face drawn. She smiled like it was any other afternoon. "We were just in the neighborhood," she said. "I didn't invite them in." I let the screen door close behind me and set the bags on the kitchen counter. Through the window, I watched them linger at the edge of the lawn for a few moments before Aaron motioned toward the front steps. The knock came 2 minutes later. I opened the door halfway and waited. "We just wanted a few minutes of your time," Aaron said, brushing hair from her face. "Face to face?" Caleb looked at me but didn't speak. "I'm listening," I said. She shifted her bag on her shoulder. "It's been a difficult few months. I think things got off track and there's been some misunderstanding on both sides." She glanced over at Caleb again. He cleared his throat. "Mom, I didn't mean for things to go the way they did. I've just been under a lot of pressure." I didn't say anything. The breeze caught the tulips still in my bag, and I saw one petal fall to the floor. Aaron stepped forward just enough to rest one hand on the doorframe. "We're expecting," she said softly. "A girl." I looked at her hand. She wasn't wearing the ring. "We wanted you to hear it from us," she continued. "And we were hoping maybe it's not too late to make room for a different kind of future." Caleb finally spoke. "The house, it was never about taking something from you. It was about trying to build something for the baby." I let the silence stretch. A car passed slowly on the street behind them. The sound of a lawnmower buzzed faintly in the distance. Then I opened the door fully. "Come in," I said. They followed me into the living room, sat down on the edge of the couch like guests at a doctor's office. I set the tulips in the sink, washed my hands, and took the armchair across from them. "I've made some decisions," I said. "Legal ones." Caleb nodded. "I'm not angry," I said, "but I'm also not confused." Aaron leaned forward. "We're not asking for anything today, just trying to reset the tone." I nodded. "That's good to hear, because as of last week, the house has a restriction filed with the county. No sale, no transfer, no refinancing without my explicit approval." I watched her face as the words landed. "I've also updated my living trust," I continued. "Caleb, I want you to know that you were once listed as the sole beneficiary, but I've changed that." He looked down. Aaron didn't speak. "The house will stay in trust until my passing," I said. "After that, the Museum Foundation will receive it along with a donation for restoration work. The rest of my assets will go to charities I've supported for years." They sat still for a while. Caleb's hands were clasped tightly between his knees. Aaron's jaw tightened just slightly. I stood. "I'll walk you out." We reached the porch steps before either of them spoke again. Caleb turned toward me, his voice low. "Are you sure?" I nodded. He looked away, then back. "I miss you." I met his eyes. "Then I hope you find your way back to yourself." Aaron said nothing. She took his arm and they walked slowly back to the SUV. I closed the door and stood in the hallway for a long moment. The house was quiet again. I picked up the fallen tulip petal, placed it in the small dish where I kept my keys, and exhaled. Later that evening, Peter called. "I heard they stopped by," he said. I told him how it went. He paused, then said, "You've held your ground, Marlene, with grace." I didn't answer right away. "Anything else I should expect?" I asked. He hesitated. "There may be one more move, but I think they're running out of cards." I thanked him and hung up. Outside, the sky was turning from blue to lavender. I made a cup of tea, opened the window, and sat by the kitchen table. The wind carried the scent of something blooming, maybe the neighbor's lilacs. I sipped slowly, letting the silence settle. It wasn't peace yet, but it was something close. The next morning started like most others. I swept the porch, checked the mail, and brewed a fresh pot of coffee. It wasn't until I set my mug down beside the window that I noticed something folded between the storm door and the screen, tucked carefully, like whoever left it didn't want to disturb me. I opened the door and pulled it out. It was a letter. No envelope, just my name in Caleb's handwriting. I sat down at the table and read it through once, then again. He hadn't said much, just a few lines. He'd started therapy. He wasn't sure how long it would take to rebuild what had broken between us, or if it even could be rebuilt, but he wanted to try. He wrote that the baby had arrived the week before. Her name was June. She had his eyes. I read it once more, folded it neatly, and placed it inside the drawer with the old family recipes I still hadn't given away. That afternoon, I baked a pie. I didn't have a reason. It just felt like the right kind of day for it. The sun had finally stretched across the porch floorboards, and the air smelled like lilacs again. I thought about June, this new little soul, who didn't know anything yet about hurt or bitterness or pride. I didn't know if I'd ever meet her, but I hoped she'd grow up kind. I hoped she'd know that sometimes the people who love you don't always get it right the first time. Around dusk, Peter stopped by. He brought over some papers I needed to sign something about the trust finalizing. "Everything's in order," he said, setting his briefcase by the door. The museum's thrilled. We sat in the den for a while, just listening to the old clock tick. He glanced at the photo on the side table, Caleb as a boy missing a front tooth, holding up a crooked drawing of our house. "You kept it," he said. "I kept most things," I replied. Before he left, Peter paused by the front steps. "You did something hard, Marlene. You held the line with love." I nodded. "Some days it didn't feel like love. But it was," he said. "It still is." After he drove off, I stayed outside a little longer. The porch light clicked on, casting a soft circle of gold across the floorboards. I sat down, folded my hands in my lap, and listened to the quiet. Not everything had gone back to how it was. But I had come back to myself. There's a kind of peace that comes not from getting even, but from standing firm. From knowing you didn't abandon yourself even when it would have been easier to fold. It doesn't mean there aren't cracks. It just means you survived them. You shaped your life around what remained, and maybe, just maybe, left room for something new to grow. If this story reminded you of someone who's walked through a quiet storm and found their footing again, I'd love to know. Leave a comment or share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're still walking through your own season, just know it's never too late to come home to yourself.